Our sixth and final speaker, Mr. Christopher Hanney, my brother's keeper. My brother's keeper, Mr. Christopher Hanney.
I have shot my arrow over thy house, and I've hurt my brother. Mr. Contest Chair, distinguished Toastmasters, my family, guests, and friends. That opening was a line from Shakespeare's Hamlet. By a show of hands, how many of you in the room has a brother? Thank you. In 1965, I was born to a woman that I would never have the opportunity to know. Because immediately after birth, I was placed into the New York City foster care system, a crockpot of over 100,000 souls crying out for someone's attention. At the age of 2, I was paired up with the boy, who was 6 months younger than I. It was an unofficial, unwritten advertisement of take this one and get that one too. His name is Gary. And Gary and I, we have bounced from borough to borough, from home to home, ultimately being returned back to the foster care agency. And it was here that Gary and I decided that we didn't belong to anyone but each other. So we pricked our thumbs, and joining them together, we made a blood pact vowing that no matter what happened, Gary and I would always be brothers. Around my 8th birthday, I was awakened by a very enthusiastic social worker. Chris, get up, there's someone here to meet you. I turned around and pointed at a sleeping Gary and was told, no, not him, just you. I was led into a room where there sat a smiling black married couple. And after a few hours of dazzling them with my smile, they were sold. And I was told that I would be going home with them in just a few weeks. Immediately, I ran to share my good fortune with Gary. And let me tell you something. The look on Gary's face when he looked up at me and said, "What about me? I thought we were brothers," was enough to crush my heart. Miraculously, 3 weeks later, there was Gary and I in a limo ride out to Queens, New York. It was what the agency deemed as a trial basis, a term that should be kept to used cars or cable TV offers, not a term that a child at any age should be able to comprehend. When we arrived at our new family, we realized that we were not the only 2 children there. There were 3 foster children and 2 biological daughters. And immediately, it became competition on. Gary and I, we began to fight. We fought frequently and we fought viciously. Everything that came up broken or missing, I blamed Gary and Gary blamed me. When Gary acted out in school, I knew it was a cry for attention and I would have to outdo him. And when Gary decided to turn his life around and get good grades, I made the honor roll. On a terrible day in 1977, the man of the house passed away from a massive heart attack at the young age of 42. It was then that we realized that our competitions were over. They were now meaningless because all of us will be sent back to the foster care agency. But surprisingly, in keeping with her dead husband's wishes, the woman of the house adopted all 5 of us children, thus expanding the Hanney family. Shortly thereafter, things became extremely financially tight. And I would overhear a conversation between my adopted mother and one of the biological daughters that would change our entire lives forever. You see, what I learned was that Gary was never intended to be taken. That it was only because of that take this one, get that one too offer, the only reason that Gary was adopted. Ammunition I put into my hip pocket saved for later use. It wouldn't be long before I fired that gun. And when I did, the look on Gary's face brought me back all the way to the time at the agency, where he looked up at me and said, "What about me? I thought we were brothers." Sometime later, in the cover of darkness, Gary packed his belongings and ran away from home, disappearing from our lives for over 15 years, until a letter came to the house, informing us that Gary had joined the military, became a doctor, had a wife, had a daughter, and was living in Germany. My challenge to all of you, scratch that. My demand to all of you in this room is that whether you have a brother, a sister, a family member, even if it's just a friend, that you show your love to them every day, because our time here is way too short. In 2009, 3 days after my arrest, I was told that I had a visitor. And the shock of seeing Gary face to face was overwhelming. And it was here that Gary told me that the only reason he ran away from home is because he could not stand living in my shadow, knowing that he would always be considered an add-on. Before Gary left, he took his thumb and he pressed it up against that glass that separated us, and I took my thumb and I did the same. That blood pact that we had formed over 36 years ago. And with Gary being a free man, headed out the door into the free world, and with me facing a life sentence here in prison, it was now I, looking at Gary, saying to him, "What about me? I thought we were brothers." Mr. Contest Chair.